All right, here we are back. This is my YouTube channel, Lessons Learned. I'm Raven, and we've been talking about parenting. This is a subject that can probably take a long time to cover, even if I get into more detail on it. But kind of thought I was going to finish it in two parts, but it looks like we're going to go to part three here. So this is part three of parenting. If you haven't listened to part one and part two, please do, and share this with social media, Facebook, that kind of thing. Comment, let me know what you think. We've been talking about lots of things. I'm not going to go back and review on all the things that we've covered so far. I'm just going to move on to some of the things that we're going to talk about here. We've Another thing that makes a difference too is, fixing healthy meals, for your kids. I know it's a challenge, and because this day and time, you got everything's packaged, and if you want to eat healthy, you got to cost a lot more money and that kind of thing. But regardless, do as best as you can. Don't teach them, don't give them all the donuts they want and all the pizza they want and all that stuff. Just try to teach them how to eat healthy, because it's not just for their physical growth, but you need to teach them what they're eating. You need to say, this is good for this. This is good for that. You need to eat 2 vegetables a day. You need to eat, you maybe need to eat red meat only twice a week. Whatever, the conclusions you come to. Learn something about it yourself if you don't know about it. But, teach them though, and that way they've got it's a teaching moment again while you have the meal you set in front of them. You are teaching them about something that they're going to need for themselves, for their kids when they have kids, and that kind of thing. But teach them, the basics of what's good to eat, what's not good to eat, and eating too much sweets, what to do for you, and that kind of thing. Not in a preachy way, or or like, wow, can I even enjoy a meal? But just make it a point to just point things out to them. Teach them, get them involved in cooking. Teach them to cook. Teach kids to cook and wash clothes. I don't care if they have to get up in a chair and put the clothes in the washing machine. There's nothing that unsafe there. Teach them safely. Watch over them. Then make sure they're doing it right. But there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, I'm going to show, I wash your clothes. Now you're old enough to wash your own clothes. Here's how to do it. This is stuff they need to know. Let them cook some stuff. Let them get involved in cooking. Of course, you got to be real safe with that. I ain't got to say that. Teach them how. That's the time to teach them safety, though. Teach them the handles on the pots, need to be turned away, and where they can't be turned over so easy. And teach them about things boiling over, and not touching things, without a pot holder, and but teach them to cook some basic stuff. Teach them to, something besides microwave. Yeah, microwave is a great invention. Don't get me wrong. But they need to be able to cook on top of the stove. And if my situation, I got skills enough to cook camping, and on the fire, I can cook anything on a fire. That you can pretty much cook anywhere else. And I'm teaching my kids even that, how to cook on open fire. And you never know. A survival situation, or the power goes out, they're not totally lost. If you got a fireplace, you can cook in that kind of thing. But in the kitchen, teach them how to do the basics. They don't teach them to let them follow a recipe, but teach them to learn from the recipe and be able to do some recipes without having to look at the recipe every time. Teach them how to basically cook chicken, to cook beef, venison, whatever that you usually cook. Teach them how to make some basic cream sauces, and teach them how to do a stir fry, whatever. But teach them things, and how to use the oven. Teach them how to make biscuits if you know how to make biscuits. If you don't, you got to learn. So teach them how to cook though. It's gonna, and then let them, sometime, to say, how about, I'm gonna be cooking this. How about you cook that? And let them prepare it. Teach them how to season things up. Not too much salt, not too much pepper. Not too much this or that. These are things that's going to go far with them in life. It's a shame in this day and time. So many grown adults, I'm sorry, that don't even know how to cook. And that's such a basic skill. My mom and dad had me had me when I was a kid. They'd said, when you get home from school, go ahead and put this stuff in the pot. I'm gonna have it cut up, take it out of the refrigerator, put it in there. Get it warming up, and make a pot of coffee or whatever. I knew how to do this stuff. But people are losing this. It's not just women that are supposed to cook too either. Guys are supposed to know how to cook. You really need to know how to cook for yourself. You never know when your wife's going to be sick or whatever like that. I do all the cooking in my house, because I'm an entrepreneur. I do things on my own. My wife works a public job, so it helps out, so I do whatever I can. I enjoy cooking though. I enjoy cooking. I do. I mean, it's something I enjoy doing, and there's, so it's nothing. Get out of this mentality of what's manly and what's feminine, kind of things, stuff like that, like cooking and stuff like that. That ain't just something for a woman to do. That's something a man should know how to do too. I want my boys to learn how to cook. I want them to be able to stand on their own. I don't want them to have to depend on somebody. And same with a girl. She shouldn't have to depend on somebody. You need to make them be little independent little packages that they can do it all. By the time they grow up. Um, so teach them other skills too if you have them. Teach them how to work on a car, how to use basic tools and stuff. If you have those skills of being able to work on your car, please teach your sons and your daughters how to work on a car. I mean, I wish my dad, had taught me how to work on a car. I mean, he taught me what he knew, but it wasn't much. But I'd tell my wife, when I married her, I'm like, I want to tell you right now, I'm not a mechanic and I'm not a handyman. And so she would know, because I mean, it's the tradition and the stereotype is every man's need to work on his car and be a handyman, and that's not always the case. And I can do some things, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying, don't, do all you can to prepare your child. Anything they can do for themselves is going to save them money. Even if, I mean, it might be, we're getting in this culture now where, at least in America, where it's cheaper to get somebody to change your oil and pay them, rather than go through all the aggravation yourself. But you still need to know, is my belief. At least teach kids, girls included, how to check their oil and check their water and check their tire pressure. I mean, you got kids that don't, teenage kids driving around don't even know how to use a pressure gauge on the tire. So I mean, teach kids the basic stuff. I mean, teach them everything because you've only got a limited amount of years. Believe me, it'll be gone before you know it. They'll be grown up. And teach them everything you can of what you know. It might seem, useless to them at the time. Maybe it might not be interesting, but somewhere along the line, it's going to occur to them. Oh yeah, wait a minute, I know what I got to do, because you taught them. So it's important. Teach them everything you know. Discuss their future. Especially as they near the end of middle school. It's very important. I mean, I mean, yeah, when you're kids, you're like, I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a fireman. And I want to be a superhero. And all this. But when they, and that's fine. Just play along with that and go with their dreams. Steer them a little bit. Toward realistic stuff. But especially when they're getting toward the end of middle school, they need to be getting a serious idea about, what field they're going to get into. And they need to be preparing for it. And you need to take seriously if they're interested in being an architect or robotics or something, like my youngest son. And he's got the grades and stuff to do it. And it's like, one of my sons, he wanted to play football and stuff. I'm like, well, here's what you got to do. And, you got to have this, you got to have that. And and he made the decision not to. And that's what you got to do. I mean, guide them. But discuss their future. Discuss realistic stuff. Teach them how to budget their money early on. I mean, when they start making some money on their own, they should put aside a certain amount, for charity. They should put aside a certain amount for their rent. Put aside a certain amount for their car, for their phone bill. I mean, even if they don't have a car payment or a phone bill yet, teach them to put it aside. I mean, and then when the situation comes around, they'll have the money in the bank to do it. I mean, wouldn't you be glad if somebody taught you to do that and you got to have a habit of it, and you wouldn't be having to rob Peter to pay Paul like I do? Nobody taught me this stuff, so, but now I know it. But if you teach them early on, then they'll have that much ahead, If you should have started a college fund when they were a baby. It's not, you can't frantically expect to put them in college and scrape the money together, because you'll end up borrowing it or going dead or something like that. When if you would have saved when they was a baby, I mean, like Gerber, for instance, has this policy you can buy when they're a baby, real cheap. But by the time that they get old enough to go to college, then there's enough money in that policy, to actually pay for their college. Think ahead. I mean, when you have a baby and stuff, start saving for them then. You can't wait till, even if they decide not to go to college, you'll have enough money for them to give them to buy a car or help buy a car with, or to get into their own place or something, or to start their own business. So do what you can. Teach them to lead a balanced life. Humans are mental, physical, spiritual, and social beings, and you can get out of balance. And I've talked about this on another video, so I don't want to get too much in detail on it. But if all they do is social stuff, social media, friends, things like that, they're going to be out of balance. If they're not exercising, then they're not feeding that physical side of them. But you can also overdo it physically, where it's nothing about nothing but your body. You got to have a balance there. So teach them to lead a balanced life. Spirituality is very, very important. They need to realize that there is part of you that's kind of unexplainable. That's kind of that connects everything else together. And guide them, in sound spirituality, sound doctrine. Like the Bible, things like that. Teach them to defend themselves. Martial arts classes are helpful in this. People think when you put a kid in martial arts, it's going to make a brawler out of them. That's just not true. It's just the opposite. Martial arts classes will teach you to walk away from a fight. If you have the ability, to defend yourself and you can walk away from a fight, then you do it, and you don't have nothing. You don't have nothing to prove to anybody, and you don't care. Because you could have defended yourself, and you learn to walk away from a fight. But you may get in a situation. Girls too. I mean, you may get in a situation where you have to defend yourself. And don't be one of these parents that, don't fight under any circumstances. Well, that's just making a victim out of your kid. They're going to get beat down by a bully. Bullying is a huge problem. You don't want your kid to be a bully, but you don't want them to be bullied either. So they need to learn after they've told a teacher and they've done all they can do. If a person puts their hands on them in a situation and they have to defend themselves and they're able to, then they should do it. And you should be glad for it and back them up at school when they say he got in a fight. If he's defending himself, then I tell my kids, or defending someone else. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry, but I'm just, but that expression's coming out. I've seen, a guy abusing some woman in the parking lot of a store. I stepped up, and I put a stop to it. Said, you ain't gonna do that, and I put a stop to it. And you've got to do that sometimes. If somebody's got 4 or 5 people jumping on them at school, and my son, somebody would jump in and help them, I'd be saying, good for you, and rewarding them for it, because that's what they're supposed to do. We got to stand up for ourselves. You got stories all the time of people watching somebody getting raped and beaten and murdered on the street while they're looking out the street of their apartment, second-story apartment window, doing nothing. At least call the cops or something. Do something. So teach them to defend themselves. Don't teach them fighting is never appropriate, because it is appropriate sometimes. Take them to a good church that don't just preach it but lives it. They need to be around other young people that are trying to live right. For one thing, they need to be part of a young group, of their peers that, so they don't think that they're the weird ones at school when they're trying to live right and everybody else is doing whatever they want to do. But like I said, part of a church that don't just preach it and make them feel bad about themselves, but actually does things in their community. That's so that that's like like I was talking about earlier. Talk about getting out and helping somebody outside of yourself, helping somebody, getting outside yourself, realizing that the world's not all about you. A church can help you do that. Get them involved in situations where they're helping out somebody that's homeless or whatever. Teach your kids the difference between fantasy and reality. You'd be surprised the effect that video games have. I'm not against video games. My kids play video games, but I do restrict them to only games where they can play the hero act. I don't let them play Grand Theft Auto where you can rape and kill and steal cars and things like that. I just don't let them do that, and they're not going to. And but even the games you do let them play, they get another life, and a character gets killed and they get another life, and it might seem, you might say, well, that's just stupid, that's obvious. No, it's not, because there's been incidents where kids obviously did not know the difference between fantasy and reality, and went and gunned down people in their school. It's been linked to things like Columbine High School and stuff like that. So just teach them the difference between fantasy and reality. That you don't have to take everything away from them. Just teach them that there's the difference, and let them know, that's not real. And you think, just be aware of that. Teach them to be able to distinguish between that, because you'd be surprised that they just get steeped so long in video games or something like that. And then there's the subconscious mind, in a lot of ways, the subconscious mind will see something and it will not distinguish between reality and fantasy. My martial arts teacher, my sensei, told me, he said, watch a martial arts movie. Your mind does not know the difference. And and you will absorb those techniques, and you might find yourself doing a technique that I didn't teach you. And I found it to be true. I mean, I was jumped on at the river by some drunks, and and it just came out. I mean, stuff that he hadn't even taught me, and I was able to defend myself. And so I mean, it's bound to have something in there with video games too. It's got to be the same. You got to be, your mind has got to make a distinction between fantasy and reality. This does. Um, be aware of changes in behavior. Lots of times, if they're spending lots of time in their room listening to screamo music and they're being secretive or they're sad or signs of drug abuse, particularly if you see behavior change. If they were happy before and now all of a sudden they're sad. If they were very outgoing before and now all of a sudden they stay in their room a lot, look for things like this. Signs of depression, signs of drug use and stuff. You can like when you go in their room, like I said earlier, tap on their door or whatever, give them that respect, but look for signs. Learn to read the body language. Learn to look for signs of drugs. And sometimes it might be appropriate for you when they're not there to search their room. I mean, it's your parental prerogative. You're responsible for them. Don't just think it's an invasion of privacy. You do it in as respectful a way as you can. But take the differences in behavior and stuff. It needs to be taken more serious. Because it can be something so serious. They could be, I mean, too many times that kids, have been found dead or overdosed or something. Parents didn't even know they were taking drugs because they were in denial. But excuse me, it comes right down to it. I mean, we're all human beings and we're all subject to temptation and things. So I mean, it ain't that. So we're not all that special. We're special in our own way, yes, but we're not like immune though to the possibility of falling into drug use or alcohol, any of us. So we've got to be aware of those things. There's things that happen in life, traumatic experiences, divorces, and stuff. That and with kids, it might not even be something that extreme. It could be something like not getting on the team, or or their teacher, putting them down in class, or something, or making them feel embarrassed, and those kind of things, that cause them to change their behavior. And they might become more rebellious, might become more mean, but they might become more withdrawn too. Again, keeping that open dialogue, that two-way communication going. Single parents can be good parents. Even if one or the other is totally not in their lives, you need to reinforce them with having adult friends that are missing gender. I mean, if you're a dad that's a single dad and the mother, for whatever reason, is not involved in your children's life, don't sweat it. Don't try to make her do it, because, just try to get some women in their life, and it don't have to be like dates for you. I'm talking about like, church or whatever, or, just get them around other women, let them have some influence, of the female gender and the male gender so they can have a balance in their lives, because there's valuable lessons and insights to be learned from both genders. Don't talk down a missing parent either, be truthful, but let your child decide for themselves if they want that person in their life. Don't ever force them to spend time with a delinquent parent that doesn't want anything to do with them. You can be a good parent. Ideally, if you're divorced and and you can work it out safely, then yeah, both parents ought to be involved in the child's life. They need to put their differences and their screaming and arguing aside for the sake of the children, and to make them turn out the best version that they can. But if that isn't the situation, I mean, wasn't my situation. I was a single parent for many years, but I made sure that I was there for them, that I was their mother and their father, and and let them know they could depend on me for both roles. But I also got other females in their life, just friends, aunts, grandmas, things like that, so they could have the influence, of another gender in their life. So don't think that you can't be a good parent just because you're a single parent. And don't be a jerk either. I mean, try to put your game face on. Don't talk people down, and just, try to make the best life you can for your kids. I mean, just do the very best you can. I mean, that's just so important. I mean, like I said, you don't. There's no one book about this. Every child is different, and you're going to have to be, as a parent, you're going to have to be creative. You're going to have to be aware of this, and you're going to have to get to a point to where what is best for my child. Don't let anybody tell you what's best for your child, because they don't know your situation. They don't know what you're going through. They don't know anything about your child. So you got to ultimately be the one that makes the choice as the custodial parent, as they call it legally these days. You got to be the one that takes charge. You got to be the one to raise them, and you're the one, whether people agree with your decisions or not. If they're sound. I mean, that doesn't justify abuse. It doesn't justify your selfishness. I mean, I know for the fact that parent that have locked their kids in the room before, and gave them TV and stuff like that, while they drink themselves into oblivion and stuff. That's abusive. Or putting them off on somebody else, or putting them off on a babysitter, or take, stand up, be a parent, take your responsibility for. If you brought a child into the world, then you're responsible, and you need to take care of it. I mean, if it's a situation even where they didn't make you pay child support or something, you need to be putting money away from them for college or something. You need to take some responsibility, and try to be involved in their lives as much as you can, and don't talk the other one down. Their kids are smart as anything, and it's not the end of the world either. I mean, when you get a divorce, don't think it is. I mean, that's what I heard all my life, coming up to church and stuff. I was, divorce is just the end of the world and it's going to ruin the kids for life. And that's just not the case. Maybe it was a little more traumatic when it was, it didn't happen as often. But the fact of the matter is, it happens all the time. There's hardly any child that doesn't know, I mean, any of their friends that their parents weren't divorced. I mean, it's become almost acceptable thing, they're used to it. And I mean, that's not a good thing. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it's being real. And the fact of the matter is, it isn't the end of the world. Kids are resilient. It's better. I used to think, and I stayed in an abusive marriage, thinking it was the best for my kids because I wanted to keep our family together. But it wasn't a good decision. Sometimes it's a good decision to end it. I'm not trying to tell you to end your marriage, but I'm just saying, think about what I'm saying, with everything. I'm not trying to tell you to leave your husband, leave your wife, or whatever. I'm just saying you need to really look at the situation. If it's safer for the kids and everything, and maybe there's a time when you just need to get out of that situation, especially if it's an abusive situation where one parent's abusing their kids or abusing their parents. You might need to get somewhere to be safe, and that's what it takes, and that's what it takes, because when kids, I mean, human babies are like the most defenseless offspring of any creature in the world. I mean, you got baby deer that stand up, in the first hour, horses, things the same way, but human babies, they're completely helpless, completely dependent on the care of another human being. And not just when they're little babies, especially when they're little babies, yeah, but but as they get older, even they need you. They need you to be there and to do the job you're supposed to do for them, and you need to realize that and be a responsible parent, be a loving parent. Don't just think about yourself. Don't be so selfish. Think about the needs of others, but don't overdo that either. You got needs. You need to constantly be modeling a balanced life, like I said before. Them mental, physical, spiritual, social, for them and for you, and involving them as much as is possible, so that they can see that they're part of your life, that they're not a bother. Make them feel loved. But also love them enough to correct them. It's not. You can't, it's like a child with a knife or something. They pick up a knife and you're like, oh, I don't want to hurt their feelings, so I'm going to let them play with the knife. No, you'd be a bad parent doing that, but let them play with a knife and they cut themselves and they bleed and then they're hurt and all that stuff, and you have to take them to the emergency room. It's the same way. I mean, that might seem like an extreme example, and it is, but sometimes you got to look at the extremes to really get things in perspective. But you got to realize that there's nothing wrong with correcting your kids. It might be hard for you to do, and they might cry, and you might hurt their feelings, but you can take and love them and let them know this is an act of love. This is the boundaries. I did this to protect you, and let them know that in a loving way, and that they'll eventually get it. They might not get it right away, but somewhere down the line, I mean, I can look back at things that I hated my parents for, but now that I'm an adult, I look back and I'm like, they did the best thing. They didn't. And because of that, I realize, I understand why they did what they did now, and it taught me as a child. I didn't see it then, but I see it now. And that's the way they're going to be too. So I hope this has helped you. This kind of ends this little 3-part thing on parenting, and I hope you'll comment. I hope you'll email me, raven@wayoftheraven.net. I hope you'll visit my website, wayoftheraven.net. There's blogs and resources there. And I hope you'll enjoy those, and put it on the social media, Facebook, Twitter, and all that. Let people know about this channel, and comment below. And thanks for listening. I hope you got something out of this, and I hope to hear from some of you. I'd love to have your input. So this is Raven signing off till next time.